Hey everyone, Eric on Paper here. I'm Eric, and I was wondering, what is one way we can really grow as artists? And I always think challenging myself. And lately, I've been doing a lot of finely detailed work, adding in a ton of textures and things like that. So I thought, okay, as a challenge, I'm going to do the opposite of that, where if I make a mistake or something like that, I can't hide it in details. And I'm looking for horror themed art because, okay, I always think it's spooky season, but it's now more officially horror season for the rest of everyone else. Came up with drawing Ada Wong and Jill Valentine, of course, from Resident Evil. So, why would drawing women be a more challenging drawing for an artist like myself who likes to do a lot of hyper details and texturing and things like that? Well, there's a weird rule in art that the more lines you draw on a female figure, the more it ages them. And frankly, in comics and video games or whatever anime you're drawing and things like that, a lot of the characters tend to skew to the younger side. And you have to learn where and when to place these lines. And especially with figures, they need to be considered graceful and feminine. Now, if you've been following the art on my channel, especially lately, Cthulhu and the Warhammer character are not exactly sexy figures, and if they are, then please don't try to introduce me to anybody. So, what I started to do with these figures was to try to get the essence of the character. Both are badasses, to be sure, but Ada, I had her pointing the gun straight at you. She's a bit deadlier, but then getting a nice curve in her spine, because part of it is that mysterious spy, like allure character, almost James Bondian. Jill, on the other hand, I see her as a bit more of a, I don't want to say secretive, but more of like a standard stoic badass type. So I just gave her the pose of like tilted away from the camera. Plus, you don't want two characters doing the same thing. It would just look strange. So there I am going in, and you can see not a lot of detail lines on her face, just the guiding lines I'm going to erase. Where some detail does come in, though, is that her dress, uh, especially with the outfit I was referencing, there's a lot of folds in the material, and I wanted to capture that, uh, as well as I think this is the early PlayStation build of Jill, where the textures were pretty much just pasted onto the models, instead of like clothing being modeled for the characters and everything like that. Plus, I'm kind of a fan of retro games, so I didn't feel like doing anything super current. And yeah, just cleaning up the outlines is we have enough now to start inking the figure. And what I'm gonna do here is opt to go with lines that are really thin. And I know you may be thinking, well, how's that a challenge? You used like the thinnest lines you could for the Warhammer piece. While that's true, the thing is I used a million of them to try to describe a texture. In this, I'm only trying to use one line, and in inking terms, a line doesn't that just is consistent, that doesn't start thick and end thin, is called a deadline. Different than the term meaning when you have to turn something in. And I opted to start with Copics to really bring out the color of this piece, because otherwise the inking was just looking kind of flat, and I wish I could have shown you more of the inking, but brilliantly, my camera ran out of space when I was recording it, so I didn't notice this. Uh, I would give you some tips on the Copic coloring here, but overall, it was coming out just kind of okay. I was planning on augmenting it with colored pencils, but then I thought, well, there's some areas that I think the Copic holds up. Start with a light base layer, then go to your next darkest layer, etc., etc., trying to build up that blend. And get a really interesting look. I do really like how her hair came out. To be honest, leaving enough white space to give it a shine and let us know that yes, Jill Valentine does use shampoo even when she's killing zombies. Hygiene is important, people. But overall, looking at this piece, I knew I wanted really powerful eyes for the characters, so I just went in with a lighter blue. And I tried to play with the contrast of the red and the blue for Ada's outfit. Is it Ada or Ada? I've always been saying Ada. Uh, and the blue of Jill Valentine's. But And then I there's a realized problem. midway through during the Copics, I hated how it was coming out. Yeah, so I went in with colored pencils. As you can see, it gave it a whole new definition on the dress. And I can demonstrate here more on the skin, is I wanted to eliminate that blotchiness that the Copics were giving me. Now, granted, these Copics are on their last legs, and the refill option I just really didn't like how that was coming out. So, just following along with the lines you've already put down, go in but do the opposite. I start with the darker colors and work my way out to the light. And in the case of Ada Wong, I just didn't have a good skin color for her in the Copics. I'm obviously not going to use the Caucasian skin tones for a Chinese character. So I just go in and start with my colored pencils, getting the appropriate skin tones there, and then also starting to work her hair quite a bit more and get that color all sorted out. Now, I didn't opt for a straight gray or a straight blue. I used a combination of both. Not only does it make the piece a little more visually appealing, but it ties into Jill's outfit a bit more. And then her hair just looked gray, so we went back in with ink to make that darker, and then just going in with some dyeing Copics to fill out that smoke. And I know smoke would be more wispy than this kind of cumulus cloudy effect I've got going here, but you know what, in art you can just that's the fun part of it. You can mess around and do whatever you want and do what feels right. Sometimes you can have the most logical piece of art and it doesn't feel nearly as good as just doing something that feels right. Now, her stockings were pretty interesting. Coming in with all of the cold grays was one option, but then I realized you need to see her skin through the legs, but it'd be darker. So I went in with a darker brown color, blended that a bit. Obviously, it's too dark for her normally, so I just went in and used gray over that. And with the gun, I filled it in with the Copics, leaving enough white for that metallic sheen. And then I used a sand eraser to clean up the excess smudges. And here's the final piece. It was a challenge, but I think if you can identify what your strengths are as an artist, it's then fun to think, okay, here's what I need to work on and do a piece solely dedicated to that. So yeah, that piece is pretty challenging. There's not like a ton of detail in it per se, but I think it's still a pretty successful piece. So thank you for watching. I hope you got some good tips and maybe examine your own strengths and weaknesses as an artist and challenge yourself to do a piece that forces you to work with those weaknesses. So in the meantime, keep telling your stories.